Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a powerful story about what it means to stand firm in your convictions, especially when you're facing some serious pressure to just conform. It's an incredible story of courage, identity, and, believe it or not, some pretty extraordinary outcomes.
You know, we all do this to some extent, right? We put on different masks to fit in. But what happens when the world pushes you to wear a mask that just isn't you? We're going to explore that by looking at four young men who faced this very problem over 2,600 years ago, inside one of the most powerful empires the world has ever seen. And you might find their story hits closer to home than you'd think.
So, our story doesn't start with some big victory. It actually starts with a total, crushing defeat for the nation of Judah. And this is the backdrop for everything that's about to unfold.
Now, this wasn't a single, swift event. As you can see from this timeline, it was a slow, grinding, relentless conquest by the rising superpower of the day, Babylon. The source material points out that this came after nearly 40 years of warnings that Judah had completely ignored. For Daniel and his friends, their entire world was shattered in 605 BC when they were scooped up and taken captive in that first invasion. And let's be clear, Babylon was an absolute powerhouse. Think of the most advanced, most dominant nation you can imagine today, and you're getting close. Their culture wasn't just impressive, it was an overwhelming force, a machine designed to swallow up conquered people and assimilate them, starting with their best and brightest young minds. The whole process was just brutal and incredibly systematic. And the very first thing they did, they went after their identity, starting with their names. Just look at this. Their Hebrew names all pointed to the God of Israel. Daniel means, God is my judge. But their new Babylonian names, they honored pagan gods. This was way more than just a name change, it was psychological warfare, a tactic designed to cut them off from their God, their culture, their family, their very sense of who they were.
This story of losing your identity in ancient Babylon, it's really a powerful picture of a much deeper human story. One that the source material suggests isn't just about them, but it's really about all of us.
So here's the parallel the source draws. Just like these young men were captives in a foreign land, stripped of their names and their culture, the story suggests that humanity itself became captive to sin, separated from our original identity and purpose. The idea is that we were created to bear God's image, but through our own rebellion, we created this massive gap, leaving us in a kind of spiritual exile.
But that's not where the story ends. Not at all. It points to a divine rescue mission. The source really emphasizes that Jesus stepped in, paying the ultimate price to set us free. Through his death and resurrection, he offers a way out of that spiritual captivity, making it possible for us to get back that true identity we lost, our identity as children of God.
Okay, so with that huge cosmic context in mind, let's zoom right back in on Daniel. He's had his home taken, his name changed, and now he's facing a choice that's going to define everything. The king offers them his personal food and wine. We're talking the absolute best of the best. But this wasn't just a fancy meal. It was a loyalty test. It was an invitation to completely buy into the Babylonian way of life. Accepting the king's food, which had probably been offered to idols first, meant accepting the king's power, his culture, and his gods.
And right here, this is the pivot point of the whole story, Daniel's response. The text says he resolved. In the original language, that phrase is so strong, it means he literally set his heart. This wasn't just some passing thought, it was a deep, deliberate, internal decision. He drew a line in the sand and decided this far and no further. He would not compromise even with the most powerful man on earth breathing down his neck.
Now, the official in charge of them was, as you can imagine, absolutely terrified. I mean, defying the king was basically a death sentence. But I love Daniel's approach here. He doesn't stage a loud protest, he responds with wisdom. He respectfully negotiates a simple 10-day test, basically saying, let's see whose provision is better, the king's or my God's. It was a brilliant, faith-filled move.
So, you might be thinking, okay, that's a cool story from 2,600 years ago, but what does it really have to do with me today? Well, it turns out it's incredibly relevant to the pressures that you and I face every single day.
We feel this pressure all the time, don't we? At school, at work, even just scrolling through social media. There is this constant, powerful pull to just go with the flow, to fit in, to say yes with the crowd, even when something inside us is screaming no. It's so much easier to blend in than to be the one person standing out.
This quote from Paul Bourget just nails the danger of those little compromises. You must live as you think.
If not, sooner or later you will end by thinking as you have lived. In other words, our actions have a funny way of shaping our beliefs. If we keep acting in ways that go against our values, eventually our values will start to shift to justify our actions. It's a slippery slope.
So how do we actually stand firm? The source offers this really practical 3-step game plan. First, you think. Remember your value, that your body is a sacred space. Second, you pray. Recognize you can't do this alone and ask for the strength you need. And third, you act. You summon the courage to just say no to the things you know are wrong for you.
And this isn't just some ancient theoretical idea. We see it play out today. The source brings up the rapper BY, who was on a huge TV competition. In a genre that can be full of negativity, he made a choice to be open about his faith in his lyrics. And what happened? He won the whole thing. He didn't succeed in spite of his convictions. You could argue he succeeded because he was so authentic to them.
So let's get back to Daniel. What happened at the end of his 10-day test? Did this bold, risky proposal actually pay off? Let's check out the results.
The outcome was just stunning. After only 10 days on nothing but vegetables and water, Daniel and his friends looked healthier and stronger than all the other guys who were feasting at the king's table. The officials' worst fears were completely put to rest.
But looking good after 10 days was just the start. The real final exam came after their full 3 years of training, where they had been immersed in the most advanced Babylonian literature and language. And this is where we see the ultimate reward for their integrity. When the king finally interviewed them himself, he found them 10 times better. Not just a little bit smarter, but an order of magnitude more insightful and capable than all the established wise men in his entire kingdom. God honored their resolve, not just with survival, but with extraordinary, supernatural wisdom.
So the big takeaway here is this. Living a life of purpose isn't passive. It's a decision you make day in and day out, just like Daniel did. It's about remembering who you really are, setting your heart on what truly matters, asking for strength when you need it, and having the guts to say no. And when you do that, you open the door for the most unexpected and amazing results. And that really leaves us with a powerful question for our own lives. In a world that is always pushing you to conform, to compromise, to just go along to get along, what's your non-negotiable? Where will you choose to draw your line?
Your likes, subscriptions, and comments are a great encouragement for producing the next explainer. Thanks for watching.